Going to do a plug-and-play remote starting system in a 2021 Kia Seltos. We're going to go ahead and we're going to get started with the disassembly. I'm going to pull out the door gasket a little bit. We're going to use a plastic tool to create a gap in the side panel. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to move the plastic tool up to release the clips. We're going to remove the 10 millimeter. We're going to remove the Phillips screw. We're going to remove the Phillips screw from the top also. We're going to go ahead and we're going to pull on the dash a little bit to release the clips. When we pull on the driver's side of the dash, we're going to want to make sure that we get this little detent up over the side panel. And we have another detent right here. And now we can remove the lower dash panel. We're going to release the diagnostic plug from its bracket by pushing the little ears in on both sides and sliding the plug backwards. We're going to remove the steering column cover plastic. We're going to take the Phillips screw out of the bottom first. We're going to need the key so we can turn the steering wheel. We're going to unlock the steering wheel by turning the key on. We're going to turn it this way. Use our plastic tool to create a gap in the steering column cover plastic trim. So we're going to use the plastic tool to separate the steering column right here at the seam. We're going to insert our plastic tool and create a gap, and then we're just going to turn the tool. We're going to repeat the procedure if necessary on the opposite side. This will allow us to lift the top cover plastic and expose a Phillips screw located here and one on the opposite side. We're going to remove both Phillips screws. Going to remove the first Phillips screw. Going to have to turn the wheel to the opposite side. If it's locked, we'll unlock it. Turn to the opposite side, remove the second Phillips screw. Now we can drop the steering column cover plastic and get it out of the way. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove the steering column cover plastic. We're going to just pull out on the top part where the Phillips were. They kind of hook over. So we're going to release both sides. And then we're going to spread the column cover plastic over the ignition. It'll also help to have it fully extended out. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to release the cover plastic and drop it down. We have access to the ignition plug. We're going to go ahead and we're going to unplug the ignition switch. We're going to press the release clip and remove the plug. We're going to plug our T-harness ignition switch plug into the ignition switch. We're going to make sure it locks, and we're going to plug the vehicle's ignition plug that we removed from the switch into the other end of our T-harness ignition plug. We're now going to need a ground point for our system. We're going to use the 10 millimeter bolt right here. Be careful, there's a heavy gauge grounded wire. We don't want to interfere with this ground. So we want to remove the 10 millimeter, put our ground ring on the bolt directly, and then put the bolt back in so that this can still lock into the hole right here. I'll show you when I remove it. We're going to use the 10 millimeter in the kick panel as our ground point. Being very careful not to drop it in the kick panel We don't want to have to take that apart. Now keep in mind, there's a heavy gauge ground wire. You want to leave that just like that, and we want to put our ring on the screw and put it back on so that the ground ring is still against the frame. That way this little lock pin will stay inserted. I want to make sure we tighten this up. We don't want to interfere with whatever the heavy gauge ground wire. We're going to make 4 connections and 2 interruptions at the vehicle's BCM. The connection points are on the back of the BCM. So we're going to remove some of the screws here so that we can move the BCM around a little bit. We're going to remove the 2 Phillips from this group of switches on the dash. I believe there's 4 Phillips. Let's unplug this and get it out of the way. This gives better access to the 2 10mm on top of the BCM. We're going to remove the 2 10mm nuts from the BCM up top, and then we're going to remove the 1 bolt on the side. Now we're able to drop the BCM down to give us a little bit of working room. So we're going to be careful. We don't want to go against the metal here and short anything out. We're just going to bring it down like this so we're exposing the back of the BCM and the plugs that we're going to need to do our connections and interruptions at. We're going to connect to 2 CAN networks on the vehicle. We're going to be working with this plug right here first. You can unplug it or you can leave it plugged in. I'm going to go ahead and unplug it. So whenever you're looking at these plugs, it's always from the back where the wires enter. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to locate the 2 CAN networks. You're going to have paper instructions that show a view of the plug from the back. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to find the 2 CAN networks, pull the wires, and I'm going to show you where they are. We're going to go ahead and we're going to get rid of a little bit of tape. We're going to be careful not to cut into the conductors if we're using some type of blade to do this. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get rid of this tape here so we have some working room. The first CAN network, or CAN network 1, is the black and white wire. The black wire is located at pin 15 and it is the CAN low. The white wire is located at pin 5 and it is the CAN high. We're going to go ahead and we're going to use our posi taps and make connections at these 2 wires. So we're going to apply our posi tap first to the CAN low. We're going to stay back a little way from the plug. We're going to make sure the wire is centered in the posi tap, and we're going to screw the posi tap back together. We're not going to tighten it like crazy. We're just going to bring it up until it bottoms out on the wire. We're going to go ahead and we're going to install a posi tap on the CAN high. That is the white wire. We have the CAN high and CAN low posi taps installed. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make our connections. On the secondary harness you will receive, you will have the CAN 1 and CAN 2 networks banded together. We're going to be using the solid gray and the gray with a black stripe. The solid gray would be our CAN high. The gray with a black stripe is our CAN low. We're going to go ahead and we're going to remove about a 1/4 inch of insulation. We're going to start with the CAN high connection. So we're going to take our solid gray. We're going to make sure the collar of the posi tap is loosened, and we're going to slip the wire into the collar, and you'll feel it bottom out, and then we're going to push it in deeper, the 1/4 inch that we stripped, and we're going to tighten up the tap collar. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to repeat this for the CAN low. We're going to loosen the collar, insert, push it in, tighten the collar. And again, you don't have to go crazy tightening them, snug them down, give it a pull test, and that'll make sure that they have a bite and that they're connected. We're going to move on to the CAN 2 network. We're going to move on to our CAN connection, our brown wire, which is our CAN 2 low, located at pin 8, and then our white wire, which is our CAN 2 high, located at pin 9. We're going to use our posi taps and make connections to the CAN network. So again, we're going to repeat the same thing we did with the CAN 1 network. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take our posi tap apart. We're going to slip the wire in the groove. We're going to make sure we don't cross thread the tap when we put it back together, and we're not going to go crazy when we tighten it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to apply our second posi tap. They should turn on nice and smooth, and we just tighten them down to the wire. We're going to loosen the collars on both, and we're going to keep in mind, very important, that we don't reverse the CAN wires, the CAN 1 and the CAN 2, and we don't reverse the networks. So use your paper instructions to verify everything you're doing. So our first connection is going to be our CAN high. It's going to go to the white wire of the vehicle, and our CAN high on our unit is orange with a green stripe. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to strip about a 1/4 inch of wire, and we're going to insert them into the posi taps. Now when you strip the wires, you don't want to twist them. You just want to leave the conductors straight. So again, we're dealing with the orange with a green stripe to the CAN high, which is white on the vehicle. We're going to insert the wire into the tap. We're going to make sure it bottoms out all the way and push it in a little deeper. And we're going to make our connection by tightening the collar. So I'm going to repeat the procedure with the CAN low, which is orange with a brown stripe that's going to the brown wire on the vehicle, or the CAN 2 low. Our CAN connections are complete. We're going to go ahead and we're going to plug our plug back into the BCM. Before you do, double check for correctness, because it will not program if the two CAN networks are reversed or if each individual CAN network wires are reversed. So we want to make sure everything's correct. So next we're going to do 2 interruptions. An interruption is when you cut a wire and you connect my wires to both sides of the cut that you make. So I'm going to show you how to identify the wires that you're going to cut. We're going to do the interruptions and complete the installation. Okay, the interruptions are going to be done on this plug. We can leave the plug plugged in, or we can remove the plug. This plug has a lever style release. We're going to press the release clip down, and we're going to move the lever back. When we move the lever back, it's going to unplug the plug. And we can completely remove the plug. Keep the lever back. When we put this plug back in, we want to make sure you start with the lever in the back position. So again, I like to get a little bit of this tape out of the way. I like to have plenty of working room. And when I make an interruption, I like to be back far from the plug in case I want to reconnect the wires. I'm not left with a little teeny piece of wire to work with if I were to do my interruption close to the plug. So I'm going to be doing my interruptions back in this area. Show you how to identify the wires. We don't want you to identify the wrong wires and cut something that you shouldn't cut. So again, you're going to have paper instructions. The plug orientation is looking at the plug from the back where the wires enter. You can see the clip and the details of the plug. These pins will appear exactly on the plug as they do in the diagram. This is how we tell our orientation, by using the pin pattern and the plug shape to find our wires. So the first wire we're going to look at is, we're going to look at cut 1. Right here, cut 1, it's a pink wire. Okay, so the pink wire at pin 45 is located right here. If you look at the diagram, you will see that the pin locations correspond to the drawing. So we have an empty pin at the top. You see that right here. This is an empty pin, a little hard to get in there. And then we have this orange wire with a black stripe, and then our pink wire. It's a ton of pink wires. We want to make sure we're right here, giving you the best possible picture I can. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do our interruption at cut 1. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut our cut 1 wire. So we're back in here. We don't want to be too far back where we can't get on the wire in the back. So we've made our cut. Whenever we make a cut, there's a plug side of the cut and a vehicle side of the cut. So the vehicle side of the cut is indicating we want the white wire with a green stripe going to the vehicle side of our cut. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to strip it back about 3/4 of an inch because we're going to be twisting wires together. On your harness, I provide you with these wires, the white and green and the white and red, so there won't be any other wires that you're going to be confusing them with. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make sure we got about 3/4 of an inch stripped. We're going to wrap our wires together. Now we want to make the connection electrically secure. So that means we want to twist them together good. We don't want to just set them next to each other and put a wire nut on them. We want them twisted. We're going to fold them once like that, and we're going to do the same thing to the other side. I'm going to give you a close-up of how I do my twisting. It's not rocket science, but we want a secure connection. Okay, so there's our 2 connections. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put a wire nut on. And if you're worried about the wire nut coming off, you can apply some tape and tape the wire nut after. But it's the easiest way to do it without having crimpers or any special tools. So we've put our wire nuts on and we have everything secured and capped. We're going to move on to cut number 2. So our cut 2 wire is the orange wire adjacent to the pink wire. So really the pin number is kind of irrelevant. You just have to make sure you're at these 2 wires here. So you'll have the pink of cut 1, and right next to it you will have the orange. This is going to be cut 2. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make our interruption. So again, we're going to stay back. We're going to make our cut. And with this cut number 2, we don't have to worry about a vehicle side and a plug side of our cut. This is merely just going to open this connection when the vehicle is running in remote start mode. So we've gone ahead and we've stripped back the wires. We've made sure we have about 3/4 of an inch so we can twist the wires together. Now you're going to have 2 wires that will be labeled cut 2, and they can vary in color depending on which relay I'm using when I assemble the device. So you'll take your cut 2 wires and you'll make sure they're stripped, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to connect one side of the cut to one of the cut 2 wires. Now if the gauge is heavy, it might be a little bit harder to fold here and get a wire nut to go on. So if it's a heavy gauge, you won't have to fold it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the other side of our cut, and we're going to make sure we're twisting them good. We'll do a little fold at the end, and we're going to apply our wire nuts to these 2 wires too. After I do that, I'll give you a close-up. Okay, so we have our cut 2 completed. We can go ahead and we can plug our plug back in. So again, we're going to start with the lever in the back position. We're going to insert the plug, and then we're going to draw the plug in using the lever. Just going to push it a little bit to start it, pull the lever down, and the lever is going to draw the plug back in. We're going to go ahead and move on to our ground connection for our secondary harness. Now before we put our BCM back into position, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put a zip tie right here and have our harness for a secondary harness coming out this side of the BCM. This will keep it a little bit orderly back here when we go ahead and we put the BCM back up. So we're going to temporarily set our BCM back in its original position. We're going to keep our ground wire hanging out the bottom. and we're going to go ahead and we're going to get the BCM out of the way for a second. We're going to go ahead and we're going to connect this ground wire also to our ground point that we use for our main ground. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove the ground screw, or ground point, and we're going to make sure we do not drop the bolt down into the kick panel. We're going to put our second ground on the screw. We're going to make sure the original ground stays intact, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our bolt back in. At this point, we can begin the pairing process. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pair our device. We're going to locate the program button on the top of our module. We're going to hold the program button down while we insert the 6-pin plug. When we do this, the lights on the front are going to begin to cycle. We're going to hold the button, insert the plug. The blue light will come on. Lights will cycle through the colors. Want to release when just the blue light is on. If you noticed, it was the first light to come on. I could have released then, but I wanted to show you that it will just go through the cycles and repeat. So we want to release on blue. If we make a mistake, unplug the plug, redo the procedure. Hold the program button down, plug in the 6-pin, release on blue. With the blue light on solid, we're going to plug in the remaining connectors, being careful not to touch the program button. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to plug in our 20-pin plug. Then we're going to plug in our red plug, and we're going to make sure we plug in our small white plug. At this point, we're ready to place the key in the ignition and turn the ignition to the run position. When we do this, the blue light will turn off. It will turn back on and flash rapidly. And we want to make sure it does this. We want to make sure we don't have the red light coming on when we do this pairing. If you have the red light coming on, then it means that your CAN 2 network is not secure and it's not getting a CAN 2 signal. If it doesn't flash blue, your CAN 1 is not secure and you're not getting a CAN 1 signal. So we're going to shut the key off and we're going to test remote starting. So I'm going to lock the doors 3 times. It's not making a noise because I have the driver's door open, but it'll still activate and start. So now if everything is correct, the vehicle is going to stay running. If the vehicle runs for about 10 seconds and shuts off, that's an indication that your CAN 2 is not secure. So we want to make sure that our CAN 2 is secure. I know this because my CAN 2 was not secure and I had to go back over, remove the taps, and because the wires are so small, one of the posi taps completely missed the wire. So I had to redo the CAN 2 connections. So look out for the things that I've mentioned, and if you do everything correct, the device will work. So I'm going to go ahead and press the brake pedal to turn off the device. So we're outside of our vehicle. We're going to go ahead, we're going to press lock 3 times. And if you notice, I'm not pressing it fast. Our engine is up and running. The runtime is 15 minutes. We have not connected the parking lights. That's what we're going to do in the next couple of steps. We're going to shut the vehicle off. As long as all your cuts are correct, the remote will still function while the engine is running. We've unbanded our parking light wire from our kit. The color is green with a red stripe. I'm going to show you where to connect the wire so that we have parking light control. So our parking light harness is above the ignition cylinder in the back here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to unplug it. The clip is on the bottom. I'm going to press the clip and unplug the connector. I'm going to show you how to identify the parking light wire. So we're looking at the plug from the back with the clip in the upright position. We're going to go ahead and we're going to count over 3 wires to this blue wire located right here. This is our parking light activation wire. If you ground this wire, it will trigger the parking lights. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab this wire up a little higher, and we're going to apply a posi tap and make our connection for the parking lights. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the wire in the groove of our posi tap. We're going to try to make sure the wire is centered, and we're going to screw the tap back together. So now these wires are small. The needle can miss the wire. So if you have a problem, double check your tap. You can pull the tap off, and you can take a look at where the wire was poked. If you look, this was poked on the edge. So this connection would be questionable. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to redo it. And we're going to make sure that the needle pokes the wire. So we're going to run our wire up. We're going to follow the ignition harness and run it up and make our connection to the parking light trigger wire. After we're done, we're going to plug the plug back in, and we're going to test remote starting and test our parking lights. We're outside the vehicle. We're going to test remote starting. We're going to lock the doors 3 times. This will trigger remote starting and activate the parking lights. We're going to go ahead and we're going to shut the vehicle off. Takeover is the point when we transition from running on remote start to running on the key of the vehicle. So we are going to have a TPMS light blinking until we put the key in and turn it to the run position. So with the engine running, we're going to unlock the doors. We're going to enter the vehicle. We're going to place the key in the ignition, turn the key to the run position, and then we're going to press the brake pedal. After we press the brake pedal, the vehicle will be running on the key. So I'm pressing the brake pedal. Our TPMS light goes out. One of the cuts has to do with the TPMS when we did the install. And now we would simply put the vehicle in gear and drive away. I have the door open. That's why we have our door open indicator. So that is definitely normal. So in the previous steps, I dropped the BCM and we temporarily set the BCM back up in place. We're going to stow the unit behind the BCM. So I've dropped the BCM down again, and we're going to place the unit behind the BCM and zip tie the unit to the back of the BCM, and then we will reinstall the BCM.